What's going on, y'all? It's your man Big Soul here. Welcome back to the channel. You know what it is when you clicked it. Today we're talking about some frequently asked questions that I just commonly see either on my channel, throughout other people's channels, what I get DM'd, what I get messaged through Real ID. So I'm just, I'm starting to see the same questions over and over. So I want to make a video just to try to culminate some of the stuff. All the questions that I'm going to talk about today are things that I have seen at least 3+ times message directly to me. So I do want to just nail them down. Hopefully this will provide some answers for future questions, but without further ado, let's jump off. First things first, thank you to all the new subscribers and all the new support that I've been getting. I really appreciate it. We are a hop, skip, and a jump away from 200. I might do like a small giveaway or something when I hit 200. So yeah, keep a lookout for that. But more details on that later. Let's jump into the video right now. All right, so frequently asked question number one: can I dual wield tank? I feel like this gets asked of me. At least I've seen this at least like 10 times, and I've seen it on other people's videos much more popular YouTube channels I've seen that question asked a multitude of times. And I know I have said something like this on my my previous whole discussion about my leveling path and what I will be doing from leveling to end game tanking, and I had mentioned briefly about dual wield tanking, and the answer is this: yes, you can dual wield tank. However, you just have to be cautious of your tanking stats. So when you're dual wielding or two-handed, it doesn't matter what you have as a Death Knight tank, because that's what I'm talking about here. I'm not talking about warriors, not talking about nothing else. I'm talking about blood DK tank, if it wasn't clear. But yeah, it just matters based on what you have available. So if you're defense capped, if you're hit soft capped, if you're hit capped, if you're expertise soft capped, you have all your tanking milestones checked. If your weapons are decent and they're better than whatever two-hand option you may or may not have, yes, you can dual wield tank. Throw Ruby and Carapace on it and you will follow the same blood rotation. There's no difference. Like I keep saying to people, that don't get so attached to like the different strikes and the different weapon modifiers and the Death Knight trees and abilities. Like all we care about for single target threat is Icy Touch. Nothing's gonna do more damage than Icy Touch. Not Blood Strike, not Heart Strike, not Death Strike, not Obliterate, none of that shit. Like you care about Icy Touch, right? And some people may think that the Icy Touch spam is boring and they want to veer off. That's fine. Do what you got to do. I'm just talking about how to maximize your threat as a tank through single target means Icy Touch, and your weapons will have no bearing on that. Like keep it a buck with you. You wouldn't like if none of the DK abilities needed a weapon to actually hold them. Let's say like Blood Strike, Death Strike, none of those abilities needed you to hold the weapon. You probably wouldn't even have a weapon because Icy Touch spam is so strong. It might even get nerfed. Who knows? I don't know what the hashtag some changes means for all the classes down the line that Blizzard's gonna do. Hopefully they don't change it, because I think it's a really cool interaction between Frost Presence and Icy Touch. But the answer is this: you can dual wield tank as long as your weapons allow for it. As long as you have weapons that are decent, they are not greens that you picked up while leveling, you can dual wield tank. Make sure they have a lot of stamina, make sure they have the defensive stats that you want, be it dodge, be it parry, be it hit. So just make sure that you have appropriate weapons. But yes, you can dual wield tank. You can dual wield tank very effectively. I would just say that if you have a two-handed weapon that's better than both of your one-hitter options, you should probably go two-handed. But whatever the weapons available to you, you can dual wield tank. Have no fear. Next question we got is: can I frost on Unholy tank in game as a Death Knight? And I'm gonna say it like this: can you? Technically, yeah, you could. Should you? Probably not. Now, I'm not talking to any experienced DK out there who's done it for years on private servers and has had no issue because they know what they're doing. This ain't the one for you, fam. I'm talking about people who, maybe either be new into the tanking role or new to Death Knights and just not sure, or just maybe haven't played Wrath. You can tank as Frost or Unholy to a degree, but realistically in raids, you should be blood. If you don't want to grief your healers, if you don't want to grief your raid, you really should be blood. If you're an experienced Death Knight and you're looking for a Frost tank parse or an Unholy tank parse, do you, fam? But traditionally speaking, blood is the strongest of the tank specs. There's so many defensives in the tank tree for blood that I don't think that the Frost Unholy tree compares. Like people like to say, oh, bone armor and unbreakable armor are comparative to Vamp Blood. To me, Vamp Blood is way superior to those two. While those two are great, the problem with unbreakable armor is just armor. Like it's just physical damage. It doesn't do anything for you for magic damage. So when you're taking all these breaths, all these dragon breaths and this magic damage that are specifically targeted at tanks, it's gonna hurt you a lot more. And same thing with Bone Shield. Bone Shield is a great, mitigation tool as well. 20% flat damage reduction ain't bad, but it's on a charge system. So if you're getting autoed and your charges are getting soaked up and it's on a 1 minute CD and now you don't have it when you need it, how much power are you really getting out of it? How much defensive power that is, are you really getting out of it? And same thing with like with just the other micro things. Like, sure, you could talent, like rune tap is high enough in the blood tree that you could talent into it. So maybe spell deflection is kind of high enough into the blood tree that you could talent into it, maybe. But you still would be missing Will of the Necropolis. You still be missing Hysteria. You still be missing probably improved rune tap. Like, I don't know if you can get that far without sacrificing some pretty important Frost and Unholy talents. But again, the answer to this question is you could, but you shouldn't. Not in raid. In raid, you should really be blood. Like on dungeons, you can do whatever you want, but in raid, you should be blood. From if you're a primary tank, you should be blood for a raid. If you're the tank and there's only 2 of you, you should be blood. Next question on the list is one that maybe hasn't gotten asked to me directly a lot. Like I've seen it maybe like 3 times, but I've seen it going around, and that's should I only bring 1 shaman to a raid group because the other 2 specs are pretty useless? Now, here's the thing. I'm gonna say, and I'm probably gonna say this for a lot of these questions, but we don't know what Blizzard is doing, right? We don't know what the hashtag some changes moniker entails. Now, they already announced that they're buffing Nax. They have announced to what degree. Like I said in my previous video, one of my videos, that buff could be 5%, that buff could be 50%. We don't know. We don't know anything. So I wouldn't, unless you're a speedrunner, unless you're a speedrunning guild, unless you're a top realm first server guild or a top 200 guild that you're trying to, like, you're going there, you know your raid environment and you know what you're looking for. Unless you're that, don't try to be that. You know what I mean? Like, because you're gonna alienate a lot of choices for your roster that you just don't have to, and you're still gonna be able to clear content. Like, you could have 1 shaman, you could have 3 shamans, you could have 4 shamans. You're still gonna, as long as they're skilled, as long as they know what they're doing, as long as, you know, as a raid group you're communicating and you work as a unit, you're gonna be able to clear content. Like, but I will say this, min-max purposes, strictly for min-max purposes, maybe not for phase 1 because enhance is pretty strong. And as far as elemental, I don't want to give too much judgment on elemental. Like I don't know. I think elemental is something that just needs the right community behind it. And what I mean by that is it just needs somebody to just really dig deep and like really say, all right, this is effectively how you should play elemental. Like, I think it's just missing that big theory crafter. But anyway, enhancing elemental will do fine. Now, if you're in a high-end guild and you're in that raid environment, they'll probably say, yes, you bring Resto, because Resto still brings the baseline totems that the other 2 specs bring. You're still going to get haste, you're still going to get spell power, you're still going to get strength of air, strength of earth, or wrath, or wind fury totem, and you're still going to get the mana spring totem, right? You're still going to get the baseline strong totems that you want. Sure, you'd be missing out on enhancing totems, which is just a little bit more strength, a little bit more agility. Sure, you'd be missing out on improved wind fury, but you still get the baseline totems and you still get heroism. So the Resto is the best slot for the totem bot, yes, but that does not mean by any stretch of the imagination that you should only bring 1 shaman and you should tell your roster or your raiders that we're only having 1 shaman. I think that's a mistake. Like, if you have, like, I think 3 shamans is good because it allows for totem flexibility. Now the Resto doesn't only have to choose between Mana Tide or Healing Spring. Like, if one of the other shamans can cover Mana Spring totem, he can use Healing Stream totem, right? So I think shamans, they're not as stackable as like maybe Warlock or Paladin, but you can get away with 2 or 3. But yeah, so that's the end of that. So the next question that I see pretty often is why, hold on, let me play this video so y'all can you know, match the commentary with, well, match the video with the commentary. But the next question I see is, why is Affliction so high value? Why do I see, you know, when I look at raid comps, they're recommending 2 and 3 Affliction locks? Why is people saying Affliction is the best caster in the game, so on and so forth? And that's for a few reasons. One, Affliction does very good, consistent damage throughout the entirety of Wrath. They don't really have a weak point, right? Number 2 is their execute range. Now, there's a lot of executes in the game, right? We have Decimation, we have Kill Shot, we have the standard, you know, the first one, the traditional warrior execute, Shadow Word Death, I guess, if you consider that an execute. But, and I'm sure I'm missing a few, but a lot of them don't compare to the Warlock execute, or the Affliction Warlock execute known as Drain Soul. Now, Drain Soul, if you don't know, the ability itself is a channeled ability, but it's still acts effectively as a dot, as a damage over time effect. And if you don't know about the Affliction tree, there are a multitude of damage over time modifier effectors in that tree, right? So that's number one. Like, Drain Soul is just getting pumped up by a lot of talents. Number two, they kind of have a pseudo execute range before the real one, and that comes through the talent of Death's Embrace. So what happens is shadow spells deal 12% more damage to mobs that are at 35% or less. This includes Drain Soul, because Drain Soul is a shadow spell. But also, when a mob goes below 25%, Drain Soul will do 4 times the damage that it would do normally. And of course, this is modified by Haunt, this is modified by Death Embrace, and this is modified by all of the other, modifiers in the Affliction tree. That alone makes Affliction incredibly powerful in the execute range. Now, there was some talks that in phase 1, Affliction wouldn't be that strong because, well, Nax was really easy. Like, if bosses are falling over in 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes, then their execute range isn't really that high. But now that we got the buff Nax, which again we don't know what it is. I'm gonna keep saying that we don't know how much, to what degree they're buffing Nax. But now that we know we're getting a buffed Nax means higher execute timers, which means Affliction's utility is just gonna go way up. So that's why. But yeah, Affliction is just a very high value caster. Warlocks in general are not squishy. They're pretty survivable, right? They have pretty good utility in the form of health stones, soul stones, you know what I mean? So they're pretty strong in it of themselves. And when you couple all of that strength and defensive power with the strongest execute in the game when you're trying to progress on bosses, that goes for a lot. And like, as you can see here, I have this isn't me, by the way. Like, I don't know if that's pretty obvious, but this is something I got from Sacro TV playing on the Affliction Warlock POV. This is just a little gem that I'm going to give out. So one of the reasons why Affliction is really, really strong is specifically for this fight, Yogg Saron. Now, I don't know if they're going to make it to it, but what I will say is this. Yogg has a mechanic to where when you face him, you lose sanity. Affliction can channel Drain Soul if a mob is in execute range while not facing the target. So what this means is they can start casting Drain Soul. They have to face Yogg to target them, but then they can pivot or spin their character around, not run, not move. They can spin their character around to where they're not facing Yogg and still do the maximum execute damage while not losing sanity. That's incredible, especially for a fight as difficult as Yogg. So Affliction just gets really high value because they do the most damage in their execute ranges, and it's just not even close. Affliction's also really good candidates for tricks of the trade targets, which just skyrockets their damage even more. So yeah, Affliction, that's the reason. Like, is the hype about Affliction real? For the most part, yeah, because Affliction's just really, really fucking good. That's all I got to say about that. So the next question may come to no surprise to you guys. I'm sure you've heard it, even with just like minimal research, and that's, how good or bad is Prot Warriors? Am I griefing the raid if I'm playing a Prot Warrior? Why are Prot Warriors considered so bad? Whatever variation of the question that you want to ask, right? And the short answer, if you're asking the question of can I progress in my raid group with a Prot Warrior, the short answer is yes, right? You can, as long as you stick to like the main blueprint of 2 tanks, 4 to 5 healers, 17 18 DPS, yeah, you can progress damn near with any raid comp, right? The speed of the progression may vary dependent on the comp. That's why people build BiS comps, because they want to have the best possible group to clear content at a decent pace. Now, having a Prot Warrior may or may not slow down your progression. Is just dependent on the person, really. Because to me, Prot Warrior isn't the most pick up and playable tank out of the 4, right? It does come with some, nuances that takes getting used to. And it does have its shortcomings. But I mean, almost every tank has its shortcomings except for like the super Giga Chat Paladin. Like, and even Paladins might even have some shortcomings. Like every tank has its specific like little niche. Like Death Knights are the best single target tanks because of the interaction with Icy Touch and Frost Presence. Druids have the highest effective health pool because of, Bear Form, right? Paladins take the least amount of damage because of how much damage mitigating factors they have accessible to them. Plus they have a cheat death, so they are de facto, like, they're looked at as the best tanks. Warriors, I think my my niche, in my opinion, the warrior niche is the mobility and the physical damage intake. Like no other tank can traverse the raid boss area as well as a Prot warrior can. Like it just can't happen. Druids come close, but I think charge, intercept, taunting, shockwave, like there's a lot of things that warriors can do to maneuver around before you even get to professions like rocket boots and stuff like that. That warriors can do that the other tanks can't do. And when I'm talking about physical damage, I think Paladin might come close, and Paladin might even be better in certain instances. But Warrior, if Warrior's not right there when it comes to physical damage, I don't know what is, because Warriors still do have a lot of armor. Obviously, they're plate tanks, they're shield tanks, so they boast a lot of armor, they boast a lot of blocking, and they have critical block, which, you know, effectively doubles the amount that they can block. And if you're, you know, looking at a fight that does a large amount of physical damage, a warrior won't take that much damage. But when you start looking at fights that do a mixture of physical and magic, they are much more susceptible to that spike damage because they don't have as high a health pool as a druid, so they can't just like soak it. They don't have as many damage reduction modifiers as paladin, so they can't just eat the hit. They don't have talents like spell deflection. They don't have access to like anti-magic shell like Death Knight, so they don't have that there. So they really are lacking when it comes to the magic damage taken or the mixed damage taken, like when it's physical and magic, because like a wayward dragon breath can kill a warrior. It may not necessarily kill one of the other tanks, right? So they do that. They don't have that. Like they don't have a good spread of defenses, but if it's physical, if the fights are physical, warriors are probably one of the best. So I would say, again, Prot warrior is more like Prot warriors being bad is more, in my opinion now, especially, is more in meme territory than it is rooted in facts. But they still do have their shortcomings when compared to other tanks, and it may put a little bit more strain on your healers having a Prot warrior than versus having another tank. But there are guilds that have had Prot warriors for years, like throughout Wrath, and never noticed anything. So again, I think it just comes down to player skill and player experience. But if we're omitting those two factors, I would just say the only problem that a Prot warrior really would have is susceptibility to magic spike and magic damage overall. Other than that, Prot warriors should be able to act effectively as, you know, the same as the other tanks. But I will say their shortcomings might be a little bit more noticeable than the other tanks do. So that's my take on it. Is Prot warrior bad? Are you griefing your raid? No, not really. But don't be disillusioned by, you know, the shortcomings. If you love Prot warrior, be a great Prot warrior, but don't pretend like you're a Prot paladin. I don't know. That might rub some people the wrong way, but that's my take on it. I think Prot warriors are fine. I'm not going to be one, but I think they're fine if you want to be one and you are serious about it and you do the necessary research and the necessary looks about it, and yeah, you should be fine. Don't dwell too much on it. For speedrunning guilds, you're probably not going to see a Prot warrior. For world parsing and world performing and race to server first and all that, you're probably not going to see a Prot warrior. In fact, you're definitely not going to see a Prot warrior. They're going to run paladins and death knights. But for everything else under that, for like from casual to semi-casual to semi-hardcore, a warrior will be fine in those spaces. So don't fret too much. Don't worry about it. It's more meme than fact, but there are some keynotes that you need to know about warriors. So take that how you will. I think that pretty much sums up my answer for that question. Next frequently asked question, which is something I've seen targeted at me. I've been DM'd it in Discord. I've been messaging it on Real ID. I've seen people, you know, put comments in my videos, put comments in other people's videos, so on, so forth, so on and so forth. Who gets Hysteria? Okay, so a while back I made a Hysteria tier list video, which I think I might have unlisted because I'm going to redux it. I'm going to do it over because I feel like I was jumbling some words and so I was misconstruing some of the messages there. I want to redo it. I want to get it. I want to, you know, and the sound quality. I want to tune up the sound quality a little bit. But in that video, I don't even know if I unlisted it. Like when I go back to editing it, if there's not a notification that pops up above your head linking yourself to the video, then that means I unlisted it. But anyway, I did the tier list video and I had put in S tier that Feral Druid is the top candidate for Hysteria, right? Why is that? Well, because Feral can use all of their abilities, all of their cooldowns, I should say, all of their cooldowns without overriding the Hysteria buff. What this means is they can use Savage Roar, they can use Berserk, they can use Tiger Fury, they can use Trinkets, they can use it all and stack it with Hysteria. That's incredible. No other class does all physical damage and can stack their cooldowns with it. If you look at Warriors, Wrecking Crew can't be used when you have Hysteria on, or vice versa. You can't put Hysteria on somebody with Wrecking Crew. That comes from Arms Warriors. So even though Arms does all physical, the Wrecking Crew interferes with the Hysteria buff. Same thing with Fury. Death Wish will interfere with the Hysteria buff. Rogues are a pretty good candidate. However, I mean, you can look at this, take this with a grain of salt. Rogues do deal some nature damage via poisons. So, especially if you're like Assassination, right? So, while you could give it to rogues aren't a bad choice. They just don't do all physical damage. They do majority of physical damage, they just don't do it all. So if you're really trying to min-max that Hysteria to the highest degree, then you wouldn't give it to a rogue. You could give it to a rogue, is never a bad choice. But they don't do all physical damage. I've seen the same thing said about a hunter. Like, they, you know, talking about like either not BM, because Bestial Wrath and Hysteria don't mix, but we can start this because this was actually a good video. Bestial Wrath and BM don't mix, but for marksman, you could give it to a marksman hunter. However, the thought can be said there that not all of the marksman damage comes from the marksman. If I buff the marksman, the pet doesn't get the 20% buff, right? If I put Hysteria on the hunter itself, the pet doesn't get the buff, and the pet is a portion of the damage. Now again, that's super sweaty, like min-maxing shit. You could put it on a hunter, on a marksman hunter, and be fine. You wouldn't give it to survival because survival does a lot of magic damage. They do physical damage with the auto shots and shit, but black arrow explosive shot, pardon me, trap damage, that's all magic. So marksman would be the candidate, but if you're really trying to min-max, you know that part of that Hysteria isn't going to go to the fullest extent on a hunter, because part of the damage comes from the pet. The druid, the feral druid, makes the fullest use out of the Hysteria. Without question, the fullest use of Hysteria. So that's why I think Hysteria goes to the druid. If it's not the druid, if you don't have a feral DPS druid, it will go to the rogue next. If you don't have a rogue in your group, which you probably should, if you don't go to the rogue, then it's a toss-up. But I think the feral druid is the best one. Hands down, bar none. All right, next question is, who gets power infusion? And again, same vein as the Hysteria video, I did a tier list on this, which I'm also reduxing, so that's to come in the future. But in that video, it wasn't as clear cut as my Hysteria one, where it's like, I think feral druid is the best. I think there's multiple options for power infusion dependent on the situation. In just a regular pumper situation, there are a lot of good candidates. I think pre-execute Affliction is a good candidate. I think a Fire Mage is an extremely good candidate. I think if you can hit him on meta, a Demo Lock is a good candidate. If you can catch a Balance Druid in the Lunar Eclipse, great candidates. There are a lot of good candidates. I think the easiest pick is a Mage, especially Arcane or Fire. Dependent, doesn't really matter. But I think a Mage is a safe bet. It's not the min-maxy bet, but it's a safe bet. They're gonna pump with it, right? They're gonna make the most of it. Now, people have argued with me when I did have again, I don't remember if I unlisted my Power Infusion tier list video, but future editor Soul is gonna take care of it. If I did, it'll be up again, reduxed. If I didn't, there's gonna be a link above your head. But anyway, people came at me for it because of kind of the flack that I gave healers, where I said healers shouldn't get it. And I remember one person like DM me and they were angry. They were like, you don't understand what it is to be a healer. Like, the mana cost reduction is huge, especially like what are you gonna do with the DPS that's dead? Like, how are we supposed to heal? Like, they were upset. And I got a chance to speak with that person in Discord, and I was like, listen, you gotta understand, like, I've healed at various points for progression raids here and there throughout my WoW career, and I understand, like, getting a 25% casting speed increase and a mana cost reduction is very, very appealing to a healer. Not saying that it's not. However, generally speaking, when you look at fights, right? When you look at the way, like, phases for fights, a healer looks at damage phases and different phases of a boss way differently than tanks or DPS do. So if your goal is just to save somebody mana, Power Infusion isn't the greatest cooldown for that. It's an incredibly strong DPS cooldown. So yes, it does reduce the cost of your mana, right? But there are way better options to save or return mana. Mana Tide Totem, Hymn of Hope, Innervate. These are things that can actually give you mana back. When you talk about mana cost reduction, if you're at 20% mana and you get Power Infusion, you still can't make the most of it because you still won't have the mana to spend what you need. Yes, your mana cost will be reduced, so you will be able to spend an extra cast or two, but you're still not going to have the mana to effectively just do your throughput rotation for the next 8 to 10 seconds. You wouldn't be able to do that. You would run dry in between, and then there goes Power Infusion. A DPS, on the other hand, can make the most of it, and that's what I really was talking about in that tier list video, is that the DPS can really make the most of it, whereas a healer is looking just for the mana return. Predominantly, yeah, cool, the casting speed is great. The mana return is what they're looking for. Not the mana return, the mana cost reduction is what they're looking for, and Power Infusion isn't a good mana preserver cooldown, in my opinion, for a healer. That's all. But in terms of who gets Power Infusion, like I said, can't go wrong with the mage. Affliction you can't go wrong with, and for the others, like, you know, Demo, Balance, Shadow, you got to catch them in the right moments. Don't give Affliction if it's in the execute. I don't think that would be ideal, just because of the way the execute phase works, where they're just really using Drain Soul and, you know, keeping up Haunt and shit like that, right? But I could be wrong. Warlock aficionados, if you're out there, drop a comment if I got that wrong. I could be wrong, but I think Power Infusion pre-execute on Affliction Warlock is pretty good. Post-execute, probably want to pick a different target. Affliction, Jesus. Mage is never a bad choice. Demo Lock is never a bad choice. Boomkin in Lunar Form or Lunar Eclipse is definitely a great choice. But I think it's very varied. Generally speaking, your raid leader's probably just gonna say, hey, highest pumper go. But those are the lineups that I would do. And I'm gonna tag on Focus Magic too, because I think Focus Magic kind of goes hand in hand. For best options for Focus Magic, Mage Trading is great. I think Resto Shaman is really good candidate if you want to give a healer a little bit more throughput for with Focus Magic and you want high uptime. They have a really good crit synergy. Plus, through the power of Riptide, you're gonna get a lot of crit back. But Mage Trading is really good. Boomkins are phenomenal Focus Magic targets. So I think Boomkin, Resto Shaman, Fire Mage, Arcane Mage, those are really good options for Focus Magic. And that's it, guys. That's all of the frequently asked questions that I get around my circle anyway. If this video was helpful to you in any way, please consider dropping a like. If you disagree with some of the points, hey, put it in the comments. I'm pretty good at responding in the comments, so if you want to talk about something, you want to ask something, feel free to drop it in the comments below. Also, keep an eye out for next week for the 200 subscriber giveaway. I'll cook together a little something, nothing crazy, you know, but something just to show a little bit of appreciation, to pay it forward to those who have been subscribing and watching the content. But other than that, you guys know the drill. You've been great. I've been Soul, and I'm out. Peace.